Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. That means, of course, we're at Hump Day. We're in the middle of the week here. Hopefully, everybody's having a good week thus far. Of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. Um, Last night we, of course, did take a bit of a break from regular news as there wasn't much news going on. I did a little profile piece on Screen Gems, most notably their time as an animation studio under, of course, the of Charles Mintz Productions, in which, of course, they were in the late 30s there for Columbia. They were Columbia Pictures. They were producing of course, they were producing Color Rhapsody. Um, Crazy Cat and Scrappy. Of course, a friendly reminder to everybody: if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. It'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Let's see. Let me check a couple other things here real quick. Alright, what was the other thing I was going to try to... Oh, yeah. One of the other things I wanted to check out between now and the end of the show here. So we do have 3 people in here, so let me just check one more thing and then I'll get into what we're going to talk about tonight. I just need to check something here real quick. Alright. Alright, well, with that being said, okay, so let's see. Let me see if we still have 3 people at least. If so, then I'll talk about what's on tap for tonight. That's it. All right. So for tonight, got a couple articles I'm going to go over from Bounding into Comics. Most notable, of course, what I'm talking about, Marvel Comics continues to retread old ground, announces yet another evil Peter Parker plot for Amazing Spider-Man. And then also DC Studios announces Mr. Miracle animated series. So got a couple articles, one in regards to Marvel Comics on the comic side, and then one from DC on the more animated television side. So we're gonna do those, and then of course we have the wrestling wrap up. Going to look back to last night's NXT, which was pretty impactful, as of course WWE continues to build towards their pair of events coming up in early April there on the 13th Saturday night's main event, and then on Sunday the Evolution pay-per-view, the all-women's pay-per-view, going up opposite of course AEW's All-In pay-per-view that weekend. You also have Ring of Honor with their Super Card of Honor event coming up in about a couple more weeks here. TNA will be having, of course, its Slammiversary event on July 20th. A lot of build towards those shows. Again, as I said, we're going to look back to last night's. NXT, as well as look at the co-promoted event from down in Mexico between CMLL, AEW, and Ring of Honor. We'll look at CMLL's Martes Populares, which was kind of a cross promoted event between, as I said, Shin-El, AEW, and Ring of Honor, and then look ahead to tonight's Grand Slam Mexico event coming from on Dynamite, coming down from AEW. So, and then of course we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So, with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started then on our materials here. We'll get into the first article here now. We're just past the 6-minute mark here. All right, so the first article we're going to do here is this one right here. Marvel Comics continues to retread old ground, announces yet another evil Peter Parker, in smaller quotes there, plot for Amazing Spider-Man. Now, we've been kind of covering this story, this kind of ongoing story about how now, not only when it comes to the whole idea of not bringing Mary Jane and Peter back together in the main Marvel universe, but also, just the idea of, I guess, Marvel Comics editorial, most notably Tom Brevoort, just continuing to regurgitate the idea of having Peter stay young for ad nauseum. So, article by Spencer McCulley, published today. So, let's get into this. So, and once again, proving that their obsession with keeping the hero, small quotes, young, has absolutely kneecapped his potential for new stories, Marvel Comics has revealed that their next attempt to desperately dredge up interest in the core Amazing Spider-Man series involves the introduction of yet another smaller quotes dark doppelganger, like Venom, Carnage, Kane, Superior, Chasm, IPEC, and even the Dark Avengers version of Matt Gargan before him, to Peter Parker's Rogues Gallery. There's a cover of Peter Parker and Simbi swing into action on Pepe Larraz's cover of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, number 11, 2025. So, all right. So, admittingly, and of course, it's not just fans who've been calling out Tom Brevoort and Marvel's editorial over this, but we've, in the last couple of weeks here, have noted that some pretty notable comic book art, some of the Marvel art, writers and artists have also started calling them out for it, including Christopher Priest and Rob Liefeld. So, admittedly, this new antagonist does come courtesy of a slight twist on the formula, as rather than being a clone or a villain living inside his body, this new antagonist, Simbi, will instead be a supposed copy of Peter Parker. Think DC Superman Red Blue, but with way more webbing. Okay. Let's see. And again, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that, continuing on here. Per an official press release, this September's Spider-Man, Volume 7, number 11, will see current series creative team Joe Kelly, the writer, Pepe Larraz, the artist, and John Romita Jr., the artist, take the webhead and seemingly multiply him by 2, with one going cosmic and the other keeping up his duties on Earth. But in the near perfect echo of Otto Octavius's time in the webs, while the spacefaring Peter seems to be his usual self, his Earthbound counterpart will be raising suspicions across Earth 616 with his violent tendencies. Yeah, that's usually what can happen when you start splitting people's, sometimes you end up really splitting the good and the evil out of people when you do that. That's usually been the trick for pretty much a lot of that. Those type of stories come along. So, Aranya, Miles Morales, Spider Gwen, Spider Boy, and Silk go for Peter Parker's throat on Ed McGuinness's variant cover. Okay, so that's just that. So this is now, I guess the press release they put out. Since launching earlier this year, Joe Kelly, Pepe Larraz, and John Romita Jr.'s new run of Amazing Spider-Man has been embraced by the industry and fans alike. Hailed for its stellar artwork and classic yet fresh take on Spidey. I don't know if a lot of fans feel that way, but anyways, it's only the beginning of what's shaping up to be one of the most acclaimed Spidey runs in recent memory. And a major turning point is on the horizon that will take the title into a direction no one saw coming. This September, there are two Spider-Men, one on Earth and one in space. This exciting new era kicks off in Amazing Spider-Man number 11, the landmark 975th issue. I guess they're talking about overall. 975 issues through 7 volumes. So let's see. So this is the 11th issue of this particular volume. So let's see. 980 or 964 in the previous 6 issues. On average, that would have been 160, almost 161 issues per volume thus far. So, following Spider-Man's shocking showdown with the new supervillain Hellgate in Amazing Spider-Man number 8, something strange has happened to Peter. Now there are two Spider-Men, but which is Peter Parker? Both. Previously teased in a promotional artwork by Pepe Larraz, Spider-Man will debut a new cosmic suit as he makes his way home, getting tied up in cosmic adventures and gaining new intergalactic companions and enemies along the way. And that's not all. Back on Earth, Spider-Man is acting different, and his brutal methods will put the entire Marvel Universe on high alert. And then the run will follow both Spider-Man, with Larraz taking lead art duties on space set issues, and Romita Jr. drawing Spider-Man's adventures back on Earth. So, and then back to the article they're referencing, of course. A tale of two Spider-Men. One Spider-Man swings around New York City, meting out justice in an unfriendly matter. Another Spider-Man is found in a distant solar system, running with strange companions, including a stranger named Simbi, making his first appearance. The next major chapter in Spider-Man's life begins here. Quote, I love really grounded Manhattan-based Spider-Man stories. And I also love when he's in smaller quotes, fish out of water, smaller quote, mode. You don't get much farther from the pond than deep space. But why choose? Why not have both? Hence, this tale of two Spider-Men, quote unquote, um, Kelly shared. Quote, on either track, Spider-Man is facing down his personal demons in the wake of Hellgate's brutal debut. Because no matter where Spider-Man goes, he brings inner turmoil with him. There are a lot of pyrotechnics in this arc, new characters and threats, and also a ton of heart as Peter and those closest to him try to move forward with their lives in the aftermath of a devastating event, unquote. Check out covers for Amazing Spider-Man numbers 11 and 12, including Larraz's promo variant cover that provides the first ever look at Symbi. Pre-order the series at your local comic shop today, and don't miss a single issue as the countdown to the monumental Spider-Man number 1000 officially begins. So, for those keeping track at home, this new, in smaller quote, copy Spider-Man, in parentheses, at least per currently available information, parentheses, clad in black, kind of like Venom and IPEC, in quotes there, or in parentheses, so violent and out of control that he raises suspicions amongst Spider-Man's fellow heroes, in parentheses here, Superior and Matt Gargan, is in some way, shape, or form a literal Peter Parker himself, in parentheses here, King Chasm Superior, shares some relation to the symbiotes, in parentheses here, Venom, Matt Gargan, and Carnage. As noted above, this upcoming plot does have some sprinkles of originality, such as Spider-Man going on a cosmic side quest and a subsequent ignorance to the fact that he is being actively impersonated on paper. It feels far too similar to previous plot threads to truly evoke any initial reaction other than, quote, well, at least Larez will kill it on art, on parentheses. uh, Featuring respective variant covers by Larraz and Ed McGuinness, Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 7, Number 11, is currently set to hit shelves on September 3rd with number 12, following 2 weeks later on September 3rd with number 12, following 2 weeks later on September 17th. There we go. So there we go with that one. So all right, there we go. The thing was being a little stubborn there, huh? Oh, look at that. We have 7 people here. That's cool. All right. Well, again, let me just reiterate, a friendly reminder here. If you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on with this next article then. DC Studios announces Mr. Miracle animated series that will reintroduce Darkseid, Tom King to run and executive produce. Now, a lot of people are critical of King's work, but now he's going to be on the animated series, not just writing comic book stuff. So, article by J.B. Augustine published today, and this, of course, is a picture from the Justice League episode involving Mr. Miracle with Big Barda there. Let's see. Yeah, I own Grufeld and Farrah Fork, who provided the voices of Mr. Miracle and Barda Free in Big Barda in the Justice League Unlimited episode, The Ties That Bind. So, now to get started on this, DC Studios hopes to pull off a miracle with a new animated series based around Jack Kirby creation Mr. Miracle. However, they aren't going very far into the character's storied past for inspiration. The series will be based on Tom King's Eisner-winning 12-issue run from 2017, and King will be hands-on with the project. Um, with the project as the showrunner and executive producer. DC announced it at Annecy and provided a log line by way of Batman News. Quote, "No prison can hold him. No trap can contain him. He is scot-free. The worldwide celebrity sensation known as Mr. Miracle. And he is the greatest escape artist who ever lived. But can he pull off the ultimate trick and escape death itself?" Unquote. It continues with a tease of where Miracle is at when the story begins. Quote, "Something gone horribly wrong with the perfect line that Scott and his warrior wife Big Barda have built for themselves on Earth." Unquote. The synopsis goes on to say a war is raging between the dueling planets of Apocalypse and New Genesis, both of which Scott Free called home, and that is, quote, and that his, quote, cruel adoptive father, Darkseid, unquote, might have found the anti-life equation. That makes it sound like Darkseid and probably other members of the extended New Gods pantheon will appear. The series also sounds like it might get dark, which fits with the description of an, quote, adult animated show, unquote. Additionally, anti-life starts to corrupt Free, according to the synopsis, so he seemingly has to save three worlds, his family and his own mind. Okay, all right. Mr. Miracle follows the announcements of Starfire, My Adventures with Green Lantern, DC Superpowers, and a second season of Creature Commandos. It's also the second project to draw from Tom King after Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. King worked for the CIA before getting into comics. After years at DC Comics, he's moved up to the writer's room at DC Studios under James Gunn. Quote, "Tom has been one of the architects of the entire situation. He's been one of the guys in the room with us, along with 4 or 5 other writers. I love his take on these characters. He just turns them slightly to be something very unique," unquote, Gunn said in 2023. Alrighty then, so there we go with that one. All right, so that's all we were gonna do on the article side of things. So, um, a little shy of the time I was trying to go with, but so yeah, so I know a lot of people and Starfire. If that was the Starfire that I think got probably wasn't because the Starfire series I was thinking of was one about her daughter who wasn't a superhero, as it were. All right. So, anyways, and we now, of course, get ready to move on to the wrestling wrap up, as it were. We have quite a bit of stuff to go over there. So in WWE news aside, of course, before we get into the results from last night's NXT, of course, some other news that were so it was reported yesterday, of course, that during her match with Io Sky that Liv Morgan may have suffered a separated shoulder, and from the looks of it now, it looks like she's going to be out for a while. So they're talking about how now the entire because they had some major plans for her going on for the show. Now it looks like for the Evolution pay per view coming up on July the 13th, Sunday, July 13th. It looks like that one they may have to really do some juggling there as as um as with her injury now, they're gonna have to. They basically had to scrap the plans they already had for set up for the show. They just completely redo everything, and that's kind of tough when you're like pretty much about 2.5 weeks. Actually no, 3.5 weeks out from the event. So so they've got quite a thing to take care of there. Um, let's see. So with that, then, um, I believe I believe one of the matches that was to be set up at Evolution that was still going to obviously be going on is a NXT Women's title defense by JC Jane. As that's one of the things that we'll look at first here. So going back to last night's NXT, going back to last night's NXT event. The opening match on the show saw Jada Parker defeat Thea Hale. There were there were 4 singles matches that were set up that are setting up for their number one contendership eliminator matches for their NXT Women's Championship. The winners of the 4 matches from last night will face each other in a fatal 4-way on next week's NXT, the 24th. And the winner of that match will challenge JC Jane, I believe, at Evolution. So, in the first of the 4 WNXT Women's Title number one contendership Evolution elimination matches, Jada Parker defeated Thea Hall, and then in the other ones, Lash Legend defeated Kalani Jordan. And then you had Izzy Dame with Nico Vance and Sean Spears in her corner, defeating Zari had Soroka with the inadvertent interference of Tatum Paxley coming out, grabbing the attention of Zarya, only for Izzy Dane to take advantage of it. Apparently, there's a little sidebar going on between Izzy, Zarya, Soroka, and Tatum Paxley as Izzy Dane's trying to put a little trying to induce a little friction between Zarya and Soroka. Soroka, of course, the current women's North American champion right now. And in the main event, saw Jordan Grace defeat Lola Vice in the final of the opening round elimination matches. Now, the four winners of the four matches on Ajia-do Parker, Lash Legend, Izzy Dame, and Jordan Grace will all face each other on next week's NXT to see who goes on to face Jacy Jayne for the NXT title at Evolution. Now, aside from that, the other match that was up that night, Elijah teaming with Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura defeated Wesley and Wesley TNA World Champion Trick Williams and TNA's AJ Francis in a 6-man tag match. Now, originally, I guess it was originally going to be Trick Williams and First Class. I don't know why they changed it, but you had Casey Navarro and High Rise in the corner of Trick Williams, AJ Francis, and it was announced also on last Thursday's Impact that First Class had formed a partnership with Trick Williams in another case of going where the wind blows, as it were. AJ, I guess First Class figures by hanging on to Trick Williams, that will start guaranteeing them more success, particularly with titles in the ring. I guess we'll just have to wait and see that. One of the other big things that happened on last night's NXT was the official contract signing of the Glamour, now known as, of course, Blake Monroe, but most people would remember her as Mariah May from AEW, in which she did have a confrontation with Fatal Influence and, of course, Jacy Jayne, the current NXT Women's Championship. After slapping the taste out of Jacy Jayne's mouth, she was ultimately put through a table by Jacy Jayne and Fallon Henley of Fatal Influence. So setting up for continual potential feud here. Basically, Jacy Jayne saying, "Well, we don't need you. We don't need you. You can go home." And Blake Monroe not having any of it. Just said, no, forget you. I'm here to stay. So, as of course, Ava, the NXT general manager, watched on Fatal Influence, put Mariah May through a table. So now, going back to last night as well. So going back to, so as I also mentioned, CML, Mexico's CMLL Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre, along with AEW and Ring of Honor, co-promoted event down in Mexico, down in Arena, Mexico City, Federal District, Mexico. CMLL Martes Populares, CMLL versus AEW. The opening match of the show featured a non-title women's match between Ring of Honor Women's World Television Champion, Women's World Television Champion Red Velvet and Persephone. Persephone got the win on Red Velvet, putting her, of course, in line for a potential shot at the possibly at some point down the road. In a match for the CMLL World Tag Team Champions, Los Hermanos Chavez, of Angel de Oro and Niebla Roja, defeated AEW's crew of Action Andretti and Leo Rush. Hologram with Alex Abrahantes in his corner defeated Neon. In another singles match, Atlantis Jr. defeated AEW's Josh Alexander. Then you had an 8-man tag match, Los Guerreros Lagueneros, Gran Guerrero, Ultimo Guerrero, and Los Infernales of Averno and Euphoria defeated Hechicero and the Don Callis family of Kyle Fletcher, Rocky Romero, and Konosuke Takeshita. This not being this not being necessarily a good week for Mr. Takeshita, as he's coming off of a loss of the never open weight title to Oleg Boltin over the weekend at a New Japan event. And in the main event, saw Bandito retain the Ring of Honor World title over Mascara Dorada. So that's all that went down on last night's big crossover event between CMLL, AEW, and Ring of Honor. So now, as we move ahead, of course, to tonight's Dynamite event, the Grand Slam event they're having down in Mexico. Here's what you can look forward to as soon as I get there. So tonight's Dynamite coming from Arena Mexico in Mexico City, with it being somewhat of a co-produced event for AEW and CMLL, with Excalibur, Nigel McGuinness, and Tony Schiavone on commentary here. In a 14-man tag team match, basically 7-on-7 here, you will have in this match you will have TNT champion Adam Cole teaming with Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito, along with, of course, CMLL's Atlantis and Atlantis Jr., the Hounds of Hell's Brody King, Daniel Garcia, and CMLL's Templario, taking on Dax Harwood of FTR, along with the Don Callis family members of Hechicero, Josh Alexander, Lance Archer, Kyle Fletcher, and Konosuke Takeshita, and Volador Jr., CMLL. In a non-title match, Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada will be taking on Ring of Honor Hall of Famer and former Ring of Honor World Champion Mark Briscoe. In a 4 million pesos high-flying four-way match, Ricochet takes on Leo Rush, and they take on Hologram and Mascara Dorada. In a match for the CMLL World Women's title, Zuxius will defend against Mercedes Moné. Once again, Moné is looking to show just how greedy she is. Trying to collect belt, coming off of her loss to the New Japan Strong Championship, about a month ago to Azumi of Stardom. Now trying to gain a belt back, and Mercedes Moné is still the current TBS champion. She's also the current Rev Pro Undisputed Women's Champion. And she has a shot against Toni Storm coming up at All In. So we'll see if, as Mercedes Moné has done over the last couple weeks, we'll see if maybe Toni Storm will be out at ringside to do commentary and kind of just be out there to try to be somewhat of a distraction. In a match that was set up last week, the Hurt Syndicate MJF will be taking on Mystico. And then in a main event, a 10-man tag team main event, the Death Riders, John Moxley and Wheeler Yuta, of course, Moxley, the AEW World Champion, teaming with the Beast Mortos from LFI, and the EVPs of the Young Bucks of Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, will take on AEW's World Trio Champions of Powerhouse Hobbs, Samoa Joe, and Tetsuya Shibata, along with Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay. Have a lot of these big events happening here. You do have some CMLL talent there, and you even have the CMLL Women's World Title up on the line. Of course, I'll bring you all the results tomorrow night on tomorrow night's episode of the Mikestand. So let's see. That looks like that's what all have. Let's see. That's all I got for you on the. Let's see. And then tomorrow night, of course, we'll talk a bit about. Of course, we'll not only get caught up on the action from tonight, but we'll also get caught up. Look ahead to tomorrow night's like TNA and Ring of Honor shows, as it were. Anyways. All right. So, anyways, let's see. Yeah, we're at 40, coming up on 42 minutes. So now what we'll do is we'll start to wind things down a bit. Let's see. Well, I guess I can kind of go over. Let's see if we can find some stuff in regards to. So the next, of course, WWE's next show will be Night of Champions, coming up next Saturday. So let's take a quick peek. Let me just talk about and see what we have for that. So I guess the resin wrap up isn't quite done yet, as we're of course going to take a quick peek at some of what to look forward to coming up on the next few events for WWE and AEW. The next big event for the WWE, of course, as I said, will be Night of Champions from from Saudi Arabia. Already signed for that match, and that will be on Netflix coming up next Saturday. Of course, you'll have the Queen and King of the Ring finals, as yet to be determined. As I believe this coming week, we'll see the semifinals taking place in the upcoming week here. This Friday and Monday. Dominic Mysterio will be defending the Intercontinental title against AJ Styles, and John Cena is set to defend the undisputed WWE title against CM Punk. So those are the matches that are signed right now for the upcoming Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia for WWE. Now for AEW, as they have coming up. Well, actually, let's go to net. Let's see if Ring of Honor has anything signed for the 5th yet for the Supercard. I'm sorry. Supercard of Honor is actually supposed to be coming up on the 11th, not the 5th. The same weekend that they're doing same weekend they're doing All In. So no matches for that show have been signed as of yet. So guess we're still waiting to see on that. Now with AEW, of course, matches we know of so far for the All In pay-per-view coming up here in All In Texas, as it were. From the look of it, looks like they learned their lesson from last year and aren't trying to jam a bunch of events in like rapid succession, over like a 6 week period. So the matches that are signed thus far for the all in event from Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, in a unification match to establish the AEW Unified title. AEW International Champion Kenny Omega will be taking on AEW Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada. Now, why they chose not to just call it the Intercontinental Championship, I really don't know. Aside from maybe the fact that they didn't want to run afoul of WWE, but that's still kind of like you combine the international and the continental title, that would naturally give you intercontinental title. So that's kind of a lame excuse, I think. But rather than calling it the AEW Intercontinental title, of course, they're just going to call it the Unified title and defend it, in the way they defended the Continental title when Eddie Kingston won it, and he was also the Ring of Honor and New Japan Strong champion as well. In a match for the AEW Women's World title, Toni Storm will be defending the Women's World title against Mercedes Moné, and then Jon Moxley defends the AEW World title against Hangman Adam Page. So, anyways, that's all I got for the wrestling wrap-up then. So with that being said, why don't we take a look? Why don't we go ahead and move on to this day in Nietzsche history? So, with that being said, let's 1985, 1965. To 2010 and 2020. All right. So with all that being said, let's take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. So, first off, I'm going to head back 60 years ago. And on this date, 60 years ago, back in 1965, almost a full 2 weeks after defeating Pepper Martin for the NWA Pacific Northwest Heavyweight Championship. Mad Dog Vachon drops it to Stan Stasiak, man who would become a future WWF champion. Stan Stasiak would defeat Mad Dog Vachon to become the new NWA Pacific Northwest Heavyweight champion on this date 60 years ago today. So now, actually, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. So I'm going to be right. Well, as soon as I clear this out, of course, I'll be right back. I'll put some music on for you guys. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So let's see. Let's start to get this all wrapped up here. Okay, so with that now, I guess now moving on to the next piece in each history as we move ahead to the year 1985, 40 years ago today. On this date, 40 years ago today, the 550th issue of Archie Giant Series magazine, um, which sold for 65 cents, was 32 pages, with 4 Betty Veronica stories in it. Went on sale on this date back in 1985. So 40 years ago today, the 550th issue of Archie Giant Series magazine went on sale on this date back in 1985. Now, as we prepare to move on to the next piece of Nietzsche history, as soon as I, of course, clear everything out here. Moving on ahead to the year 2010, 15 years ago today. On this date, 15 years ago today, back in 2010, Pixar Animation's Toy Story 3 had its U.S. premiere on this date in 2010. So on this date in 2010, 15 years ago today, Toy Story 3 premiered in the U.S. Toy Story 3 is a 2010 American animated comedy drama film produced by Pixar Animation Studios for Walt Disney Pictures, the third installment of the Toy Story series. So on, as I said, on this date, 15 years ago today, Pixar's Toy Story 3 had its U.S. premiere on this date back in 2010. And finally, we move ahead to the year 2020. On this date in the year 2020, 5 years ago today, the Shin-El Animations, The Eighth Son, Are You Kidding Me? And Ajia-do Animation Works, Kakushigoto, both completed their runs on Japanese television on this date back in 2020. So 5 years ago today, Shin-El Animations, The Eighth Son, Are You Kidding Me? And Ajia-do Animation Works, Kakushigoto, both completed their television runs on this date in 2020. So, with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we're back here with more Nietzsche News tomorrow. As I said, we'll probably get you all caught up on what happened on tonight's Dynamite. Look ahead to tomorrow night's Impact and Ring of Honor shows. And of course, we get caught up on all the latest in Nietzsche News. So with that, let's see. And don't forget, of course, this Sunday, I will be joined by the Metal from the Vomitorium, as we will be completing our look back at comics that went on sale in May of 1940 from in this case, we'll be focusing in on books that went on sale from Street and Smith and United Feature Syndicate. You're looking at the 50th issue of Tip Top Comics, as well as the 5th issue. We'll be reading primarily out of the 5th issue of Shadow Comics. We'll be reading the features such as Shadow Comics and The Shadow and Arn Monroe. All right? Yeah, Arn Monroe. So Ian Monroe. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.